Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à la conférence de presse.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Renault Group press conference. We are talking to you from the headquarters of the Renault Group with Jean-Dominique Sénard, who is chairman of the company, and Clotilde Delbos, who is CEO. We are going to hold this press conference in French with simultaneous interpretation into English, and you can ask any questions you like after the presentation. Jean-Dominique Sénard has the floor. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for being with us, even though it's remotely. After 6 months of very hard and very disciplined work, we can now unveil the plan that we have set up for Renault, which was presented to the board of the group yesterday evening. I'm completely convinced that we are taking the right decisions. With Clotilde, we are rebuilding the sustainable foundations of Renault, and we are going to take 3 years to achieve this. We are going to respect the industrial timetable, and we will do this in consultation and collaboration with others. A lot of things have been said and written, and they were quite distorted. And today, I would like to ensure that the company talks in a serene manner because it needs its future. Believe me, every decision, every measure for saving has been very, very thoroughly weighed. We have thought of our employees, obviously, because we know that these decisions may disturb them. It is our responsibility today to take difficult decisions, and we are doing it because we are convinced that these are the right decisions to take. But we will always keep in mind the people involved, and we will respect the organization. The kind of crisis that we have just come through forces us to act, but we have to keep in mind the industrial schedule, which you know always takes a long time. Today, the company can no longer take the weight of these SG&A expenses given the collapse of the markets. But this is not just a defensive project or plan. It is an offensive one, because we're going to talk about the savings of 2 billion euros over the next 3 years, and that is in order to ensure that the group can come back to positive competitiveness. How are we going to do this? Clotilde will go into detail of the plan. But you will see that we are looking at efficiency in every single one of our operations, whether it's in engineering, within the new working framework of the Alliance that we presented to you 2 days ago, but also in our manufacturing sites. And what we are looking for, of course, is structural costs that we can cut, but we are not announcing a plan to close factories. This is an overall and coherent plan. Given what has been written here and there, we are only planning to close 3 sites of our 14 sites in France. And this is only to ensure that we can keep value-added performance and actions here. We are ensuring that we can be more sustainable by organizing our work in France around strategic hubs that are strategic for the future, such as electric vehicles or the circular economy. Lastly, I would like to say that these changes will only be implemented within the framework of a permanent dialogue that is very important to all of us, and will be done in very close collaboration with our labor partners and with the local authorities, that we will try and implement as quickly as possible. I'm now going to give the floor to Clotilde, who is going to go into detail about this plan. And of course, after she's finished, we will answer any questions you might have. Thank you, Jean-Dominique, and welcome everyone. As we announced in February, and as we also declared this morning, we've talked about the detail of our draft plan to save 2 billion euros, which will be implemented over the next 3 years. The objective is a very simple one: to rebuild the basis of a financial performance that is most robust. I'll keep it quite brief. First of all, 2 remarks to sum up this plan. First of all, this is a draft plan, and the planned changes will be implemented in consultation and collaboration with our labor partners and local authorities, as you just heard from Jean-Dominique Sénard. Secondly, the 222 plan is going to be tackling our operational performance and not our strategy, because the responsibility for that, of course, lies on the shoulders of our future CEO, Luca de Meo. I'm going to start by sharing the reasons why we find ourselves in the current situation. First of all, the COVID crisis, of course, simply made the problems that we were already having more serious. And also this plan, actually the previous plan, has shown the problems with the structural plan that we had earlier, because we were following actually the previous plan, which was to find as many volumes as possible, and in fact to spend a lot on R&D. And in spite of that, this plan actually affected our way of working, and because we had structural costs that were sized for a growth in the markets that did not take place, and therefore it was important for Renault to change its mindset and to adjust the way it worked. We have to now lay the foundations for healthy and resilient performance. Today we are giving the priority to our financial performance so that we can generate enough cash flow to continue to invest in our future, and therefore to ensure the durability and the sustainability of our company. We will be implementing our action plans with a lot of rigor and discipline, while at the same time keeping our customers in mind and using all the assets of the alliance. The cutting of our costs is the only objective of this plan. Of course, that will not be enough to re-establish our competitiveness, but it's the first foundation stone. Other actions will also be taken at the same time as this plan. We will improve our variable costs, our price positioning, and that will ensure that we are not as dependent on sales volumes, and it will continue to improve our profitability. Later on, our next CEO, Mr. Luca de Meo, will also add his strategic vision. Lastly, as we presented to you on Wednesday, the alliance is a very powerful accelerator of performance for the group. But let's come back to the cost savings we're going to make. To achieve our objective of over 2 billion euros, we have decided to look at every single part of the company, all of the processes, all of the departments, without any taboos. And we've actually established these three things that we can cut: engineering, production, and SG&A. First of all, we have to also make less diversity in our versions, in our vehicles, in our engines, and our components. The second point is to have more common parts, shared parts. We have to therefore reduce our diversity, and we'll be more efficient, including for our platforms. By 2026, we will have switched from 13 to 4 platforms. Each of these will make it possible to produce 600,000 vehicles per year. But this simplification is not going to be done at the expense of the richness of our range or our rate of launch. 22 launches are still scheduled to take place over the next 3 years. The third one is to ensure that our organization is more efficient. We are going to concentrate the development of our strategic technologies and high value-added technologies in France, where our key skills have to be kept: electrification, connectivity, and the development of the platforms of the alliance that are allocated to Renault. Now let's take it manufacturing. Within Drive the Future, we had decided to produce more than 5 million vehicles by 2022. Today, we know that we will not achieve that level of production, and therefore we will have to readjust our capacity. Our ambition is to bring this capacity from 4 million to 3.3 million vehicles per year, according to the Harbour Plan. By 2024, we will keep our production capacity of about 5 million vehicles. So as a total, this will represent a cut of about 10% over the next 3 years and almost 20% by 2024. In order to achieve this, we have reviewed every plant line by line in every country. And of course, I can take any questions you have on this point later on. So this added to the modernizing of our plants will make it possible for us to reduce our fixed costs by about 650 million euros. Now let's take a look at the third lever of savings, our structural costs. We structured ourselves, including the way we work, and the way we functioned for an ambition that we never achieved. And of course, our expenses followed those plans. And in order to remedy that, we have reviewed all of our general costs, administrative costs, marketing, for all the functions of the company. And so overall, the cuts in these SG&A costs will represent about 700 million euros of savings. This plan, this draft plan, will necessitate a potential resizing of our staff with potential impact of about 15,000 jobs worldwide, including 4,600 in France. Within this totally unprecedented context, and because this is part of the DNA of Renault, we will have a very responsible approach, and we will, of course, take full account of the industrial timetable, the durability of the company, and the respecting of people and the right of our employees. For these potential adjustments, we are committing to ensure that we'll have an exemplary dialogue with our labor partners and local authorities, and we will be acting in a collaborative manner with a long-term vision to continue to ensure the renewal of our skills and ensuring that the group will keep up with the most advanced technology. So to conclude, we are changing our performance model, and we are giving priority today to profitability rather than volumes and efficiency rather than size. So this draft plan for the reduction of costs was thought out with lucidity and pragmatism. We have clearly faced the weaknesses of the group. We have made the right choices, although they're difficult, while keeping in mind concern for the people concerned, for jobs and the industrial calendar, as I said. We are not going to simply replace the volume race and the innovation race that we had in the past by a race for profits in the short term. We are aiming for a sustainable and responsible performance, and for that we are coming back to our fundamentals. We have taken the time that we needed to take the right decisions. 2222 does not have any other objective than reducing our fixed costs, because it is going to be up to Luca De Meo, our future CEO, to define our strategy and our vision for the years to come. Thank you very much, and now we can take your questions with Jean-Dominique. Thank you very much, Clotilde, and thank you, Jean-Dominique. You can, of course, ask your questions live immediately through 3 systems: a video conferencing system, or a teleconferencing system, or in writing. And we can take the first question right now, which comes from Reuters. And it's an oral question. Go ahead. Yes. Thank you. I have 2 questions concerning the strategic review concerning the Fonderie de Bretagne. We've heard some announcements that say that you're neither going to sell the site nor are you going to close the site. I'd like to know some detail about that. And another one concerning the reorganization of gearbox manufacturing worldwide, and are any other activities likely to benefit our French sites? Yes, Mr. Sénard, I'll answer your first question. As far as the Fonderie de Bretagne are concerned, we've said today that we are going to launch a strategic review. I spoke to the president of the Brittany region just a quarter of an hour ago, and we've said that we will work together and we will think clearly about the future of that site, the future of its activity, and above all, the future of the people who work on that site. We know that we can no longer carry on as it is today, but in order to take decisions, we have to think about this together, and that's what we're going to do. Clotilde, for the second question concerning gearboxes, today we can't really give you the detail of that, because we also have to talk about this with our local partners. We can't just have a dialogue with the labor unions in France, obviously. But what I can say concerning engines, for example, is that we've decided to manufacture in France an electric motor of 100 kilowatts, which was supposed to be sourced from China earlier. So for gearboxes, we don't know what we can bring back to France, but on the other hand, we have taken this decision to localize an electric motor in the making of an electric motor in France. We have another question in English, which is written, but you can, of course, answer in French.
La question de Herbie Schmidt from Neue Zürcher Zeitung in Switzerland. The statement mentions open reflection of the reconversion of the Dieppe plant after the end of Alpine A110 production. Does this mean you are considering discontinuing the Alpine brand?
Clairement, la marque Alpine est une marque magnifique.
So clearly, the Alpine is a beautiful brand. It's a wonderful brand. And we do have to look very, very seriously at the future of this brand to see how it can continue to bring its added value component to the group. So as you heard from Clotilde, we will have to continue to think about this with Luca De Meo, because it's about the strategic vision for this brand. How can we continue to have it within the group, and how can we really take advantage of all of its value? As far as the Dieppe plant is concerned, it's quite obvious that we cannot continue as we are doing today. This plant does not manufacture enough vehicles for us to be able to consider its future serenely. So as we did with Brittany, we have discussed this with all of the stakeholders, including the local authorities, and we are going to continue to think about how we can continue to add value to the Dieppe plant, because it is made up of people who are passionate about the Alpine. And obviously, you all know what a great reputation the Alpine has. There is so much skill within this plant that we really do have to ensure that it's used productively. We are going to think about this, all of us together, but we cannot maintain the status quo. That is sure. The next question is an audio question, and it comes from Andersblatt. Go ahead, ask your question. The microphone is open. Yes, hello, thank you. Can you give us a little more detail on the 10,000 positions that are going to, jobs that are going to disappear worldwide? Tell us which countries are concerned, and maybe can you say a little bit more about the other models that you're going to discontinue? For example, are you going to withdraw from the segment that the Talisman is in today? So, Clotilde, to answer your two questions, no, today we can't really tell you exactly where we are going to try and cut jobs. But what I can tell you is that given that we are looking at our efficiency worldwide, we are going to look at every single region and every single function to ensure that all of them can help us to come back to the ideal size to ensure our competitiveness. So that's the answer for your first question. And for the second question, no, we can't really give you an idea of our product plan by 2022 or 2024. Of course, we have an idea of what it's going to look like, but once again, I think once it really has to be validated and approved by Luca De Meo, and I'm sure that Luca De Meo will have some new ideas and some very interesting ideas, which will help us to explain it to you much better when it's possible in a few months' time. Thank you very much. Next question is a written question from Luigi Pernard from La Gazzetta dello Sport.
To introduce a budget cap from 2021. Is that enough for Renault to stay in the business with an official team, or you will change your plans not to be committed to Formula One anymore?
Alors, merci pour la question. On avait déjà annoncé.
Thank you for your question. We had already announced that we would stay in Formula One with a team that is being built again, as you know, is being rebuilt. But the idea, the fact that the FIA has actually capped expenses is great news for us. Now we have a video question, which we should be able to see.
Is that enough for Renault to stay in the business with an official team, or you will change your plans not to be committed to Formula One anymore?
Alors, merci pour la question. On avait.
Thank you for the question.
Vous nous entendez, monsieur?
Again, as you know, is being rebuilt.
Ok, on a un petit problème technique. On va passer sur une question écrite de Gustavo Enrique Rufo from Inside EVs. When you mention Nissan and Renault will share platforms and upper body components, that gives me the impression you will use badge engineering to sell the same car under different brands. If that is not the case, what do you mean by upper body components? And how will you make distinct vehicles with so many shared elements?
Alors, non, nous n'allons pas faire du cross-badge.
No, we're not going to do cross-badging with Nissan and Mitsubishi. That is not in the plan at all. And in fact, I think that would be a real mistake. What we do plan to do is to base our cars on common platforms, which we were already doing. But there was a gap in the product plan, which could have had the consequence that the common platforms were sort of drifting off in order to take into consideration the new standards that we had to follow. So today we are aligning our product plan to ensure that we have 100% shared platforms. When we talk about the upper body now, today we realize that once you're on the platform, we are redoing everything in Nissan and in Renault, including things that we should not have to redo, either because the client doesn't see it at all or because it's something that's quite standard. So our objective is to have teams with a leader who will develop the platform plus the first upper body, and then for what we call the sister upper bodies, we will have teams. We'll have, let's say, have engineers from our partners within our engineering team so that they can ensure the specifics of the DNA of the other brand are going to be taken into consideration as well. So they won't be cross-badged. We'll have a maximum of commonality for the platform as well as for the upper body, but with very distinct parts to ensure that a Nissan looks like a Nissan and a Renault looks like a Renault. And later on, when it's relevant, we want to produce these vehicles in the smallest number of plants possible worldwide. And if we can do this, we believe that we could actually save up to 40% of the overall entry ticket for all three companies, which can obviously mean a lot of money, a lot of savings for all three companies. And one last word. In Europe, when you look, for example, now at the shopping list and the vehicles with which the vehicles are, when our customers hesitate when they come into our showrooms and wonder whether they should buy a Renault car or not, finally, a Nissan vehicle or a Mitsubishi vehicle is quite low on their list, because a customer who wants to buy Renault may not necessarily be attracted by Nissan or Mitsubishi's DNA and designs. So we have what we need between the three brands to really save a lot of money while making distinctive vehicles. Mr. Sinha, if you don't mind, I'd like to add something. This really is exactly what we were saying when we talked about the alliance 2 days ago. This new state of mind, this new mindset, which is going to take us to a huge potential. I think that the discipline that we are going to use now will ensure that we can at last have common platforms, and we will all know that it's a good thing. But actually, we have to go beyond that. And it's the way we use these common platforms that counts, and not the number. And I think for that, Clotilde really summed up the situation beautifully. Okay, the next question comes from France Info, and it's on the telephone. Go ahead. Yes, hello. The state-backed loan of 5 billion euros apparently has not yet been signed. Is there a condition for the signing of that? Does it mean that you have to deal with your savings plan in a certain way? And my second question is, right now, do you know whether any other sites are going to be closed? Do you know that today outside of France? Mr. Sinha, for the first question, I can tell you that for all the elements concerning this credit line are now ready. And a lot of work has been done by the Renault's teams as well as the teams of the APE, the agency that looks after the state's shareholding. And the question really is a question of time. It's signing a decree. What I can say today is that Renault is working. Renault is continuing its life, and this credit line, as of today, we don't need it. But if we can possibly, go through this time, come through this crisis without drawing on this credit line, we will. At least, certainly not drawing on it fully. So, right now, we are not yet in in a situation of crisis. So we are waiting for this to be signed, but we're waiting for it quite tranquilly, and we hope that it's going to come soon. And Clotilde. Now, as far as the rationalizing of our capacity is concerned, as we mentioned in the press release, there's going to be very few sites will be closed down, because the only one that Jean-Dominique mentioned is the Choisy site, which is actually going to be transferred to Flins. So we are not going to simply close down a site and do away with all the jobs there. So we have a strategic review that we've carried out on all of our sites. And so neither in France nor abroad, apart from what I've just mentioned, no sites are going to be closed down. Okay, we'll take another audio question from Bertie Bayard from The Figaro. Yes, hello. My first question concerns the cost of this plan. What do you think the budget is going to be? And secondly, can you tell us a little bit about the cash position of the group right now, given the COVID crisis? And also, we've talked a lot about the overcapacity of Renault. Can you tell us a little bit more about the overcapacity of the group in France? Clotilde. Now, what was the first question? The cash position? But before that, there was the budget. Yes, the cost of the structural plan. Yes, we announced that the cost would be 1.2 billion euros of cash over 3 years, and that will make it possible for us to have a cost reduction of 2 billion euros per year by 2022. So that's the budget. Now, no, we're not communicating on our cash position outside of the traditional periods where we do financial communication. You know that that is regulated by the AMF, and we can only communicate at specific times. And then the capacity in France. Well, the question of industrial capacity in France, of course, is something that we all have in mind, because I think it's quite well known now that today we are functioning in a position where Renault is in undercapacity. So I think we today have a maximum capacity of 1.8 million vehicles, and today we are producing 650,000. So you can see that there's a margin. So the whole objective, the target of all the work that we're going to do now with the consultation, is how we can organize all of this in order to reduce the capacity to a level that suits us, and yet keeping some margin. Because if we don't do this, we are going to find a problem very quickly. We find ourselves in a situation where we can't keep our plants open, and we can't afford to arrive at that point. So you can see that that the world is changing so quickly, and we keep looking at what our competitors are doing, and trying to ensure that our French plants are as competitive as possible. So all we are doing in France is aiming at that. We should have a little bit of more extra capacity, because if we can achieve the competitiveness level that we are aiming at, we will be able to attract more vehicles into our plants, including from the alliance. And so it is very coherent to recover competitiveness and to give hope that we can add more cars into our plants. That's the objective that we're following. Thank you. Next question comes from Christian Schubert from FAZ, and it's in audio. Yes. Hello, Mrs. Delbos and Mr. Senard. You can hear me, okay? My first question is, you've given us a few indications that there may be some announcements concerning Daimler and Mercedes. And my second question is that Bruno Le Maire said that Renault's survival was on the line. So is it possible that you might increase your capital? And my third question is, does your plan contain any elements of relocalization? Thank you very much. Okay, I'll answer your first question, and then I'll let Clotilde answer the last one. Sorry, I'm going to answer your last question. Of course, the question of Renault's survival is very much in our minds, but we are optimistic and we are acting positively to solve the questions, the crises that we have now. We know that the COVID-19 crisis was a huge one, but of course it didn't just affect Renault. It's affected all companies, most companies. And as you can see, this particular plan, we would have presented it to you whether there had been a coronavirus crisis or not, because we'd announced it in February. So this competitiveness plan that we are presenting to you was in any case necessary for Renault structurally. Based on the diagnosis that we had done of the company in at the end of last year. We knew that if we wanted to keep up with our competitors on a certain number of subjects, we had to set up this plan and implement it. The COVID-19 crisis has simply made it more urgent. That's all. And that is why I really hope that the state, the local authorities, and our labor partners will understand how urgent this thing has become. But now, you know, if you talk about survival, every company in the world today is working to ensure its survival. And that is the main aim of the management as well as of the organs of governance. So I think we have to stay serene and positive. Now, as far as Daimler is concerned, now, of course, we mustn't forget this alliance that we have with Daimler. And in the past, it has produced excellent results. And so, I think that the vehicle that we manufacture for Daimler which is the Citan. Daimler recently decided to continue that collaboration. We have very good relations with the management of Daimler, and Clotilde and I decided at the end of last year to re-trigger that alliance because it was well worth it. And I can tell you that from the CEO of Daimler, we got a very positive reaction, and we are working very regularly with his teams to see how we can ensure that the future of that particular alliance can continue. And so far, the dialogue has been extremely positive, and Clotilde and I really hope that very quickly we will be able to announce how this can be concretized, can be made concrete in an even more substantial manner.
On the last question, resourcing. Of course, what we are trying to do is to keep in France what is being manufactured in France at this point, and that is the main objective, and that is what lies under all the decisions we've made. That is that are on the table now. I mean, electric vehicles or LCVs that can be that are being built on the alliance's platforms can still be built in France. And as Jean-Dominique said, once we have become more profitable, we should be attractive, including for our partners, and that is in particular Nissan and Daimler, to attract new vehicles there. But that can only be done only if we can restore profitability. The one thing that is being, well, the new thing being relocalized is this 100 kilowatt electric engine, but everything else will depend on the rest of our activity. It has to be profitable enough, seen from our partners' viewpoint, so that we can, have our plants run at full capacity to make them sustainable and profitable. This business of relocalizing is critical. You have to understand that things in this industry cannot be done overnight. We're looking at the long term and long movements, and overnight changes don't occur. The boat, however, is steering into a new course, and we have decided to suspend some of our investment overseas while significantly increase our own competitiveness. This means that we have set a new course, and even though it is a big ship, we are steering that course confidently. Thank you. Another question, an audio question, Nabil Bourassi from La Tribune. Yes, good morning, everyone. I had a question. You announced a €2 billion planned savings project, and to cut fixed costs by 2 billion euros. But it's been a couple of years now that you said that the alliance, I mean, according to last plan, managed to achieve a 5 billion euro saving, and that apparently was not enough. So were the synergies really worth 5 billion, and to what extent was Renault capable to take advantage of that? Was it shared with Nissan? Well, hang on there, says Clotilde. The synergies within the alliance are not the same thing as what fixed costs in Renault. Synergies are costs within the alliance, but that included not just cutting costs, but increasing revenue. For instance, when Nissan built cars in Korea for sales in the US or Europe, that made it possible for Nissan to increase its sales. And we also had cost avoidance in the package with the synergies, and each partner of the alliance could access the other party's technology without having to invest. So the word synergy was wide-ranging, and that cannot be compared with the 2 billion euro cut in fixed costs. But as we just said this morning in the analysts' conference, what we're looking at are the shortcomings of Renault. We became over-dimensioned. We increase our size thinking of increased volumes, but this is volumes that didn't occur. But that has nothing to do with the alliance. This is Renault, and the synergies of the alliance were not going to help us cut down on operating costs. I mean, these cost reductions have been introduced at our own behest. When we're trying to cut costs, this has nothing to do with the alliance. The fact that we have too many models or the way in which we certify cars, this is nothing to do with the alliance. It is Renault itself which embarked on the wrong course, and we are redressing this, and that's why we need the 2 billion euros, irrespective of the alliance, even though, of course, we are still taking advantage of the synergies in terms of purchasing platforms and the other items we already explained. But what we are trying to do is improve the scope of action with the alliance, and we might improve synergies right there, but nonetheless, we still have to restructure Renault to ensure that it can become more competitive and redress its own shortcomings. We have a question now from Anne Fess from Les Echos, an audio question. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I have several questions, one on engineering. Can you give us details about the way in which you propose to save or cut costs on engineering, especially in France? What will happen at the Techno Center? What will be the effects of restructuring at the Techno Centre? And then the manufacturing reorganization. Nissan is closing its plant in Barcelona. Will Renault be building cars there? Capture and Kadja are now rumored to be built in Sunderland. Is that going to happen? Because there are all sorts of restructuring now. So is it all right? Can we leave it at that for now and take the first two questions? Yes, as Clotilde Delbos says, on engineering, well, savings will hinge upon two things: our diversity and our own efficiency. Diversity, as I said earlier on, there was too much of it within models. I don't even mean the lineup. I mean the different versions of each model, the number of components that come into play to build individual models. And Gilles Le Bon and I believe that we can reduce by 25% the number of components that come into the manufacturing of a car. So that will make a huge difference. We will also have shared parts or shared engines. We had 75%. We'll make it 85% of shared engines. We will also have a more streamlined base of subcontractors. We had 9 main subcontractors around the world for 80% of our business. Now we want to bring this down to 4 and so that means a more significant footprint of each of these, including in low-cost countries. We have also a superb network of TCRs, technological centers around the world, and we would like to use them better to develop vehicles that are in line with market expectations in the various markets. And as regards France itself, well, that, of course, is the core of our engineering activity. So there could be some shifting around of staff in the country if we make better use of our worldwide engineering staff. But in France, we want to bank on high-tech and value-added technology. So that's where we are leaders. Everything to do with EV technology or the high-tech engine, which is a newcomer, but it is something of a jewel that will be rolled out in the weeks and months to come. The electronics and electronic architecture, all this will be done in France, and we're proud to announce that we will be able to focus on that here in France, on these high value-added technologies. Regarding the other question, the manufacturing reorganization, Barcelona will not have much effect on our product plan because, for reasons of standards, we couldn't continue with the pickup there, and the small vans now are already being built in northern France. So the Barcelona situation will not have much of an impact for us. The decision announced by Nissan yesterday will not have much effect on us. As the last item, you shouldn't believe everything you read in the papers regarding the allocation of Renault cars at Nissan and vice versa. What exists has already been shown. In Latin America, we have shared manufacturing in plants there, but in France or in Europe at large, that nothing has been decided in this respect, and that will come in due time. We'll cross that bridge when you get there. So all you've seen in the newspapers are but rumors. And there was a final question about batteries, I believe, or was there? Okay. You want to put that question about batteries? I believe you had a question about. Yes. Yes. How much are you going to be investing in electric batteries? I heard several hundred million euros. And on recapitalization, will that be needed? I'm not sure you answered that question, including, well, the losses of Nissan. Equity will be suffering a write-down, so will you need to recapitalize? Well, on the question of batteries, we are very well supplied, and for the years to come. However, there is, of course, a European project, and we have given our agreement. We will be part of that, and assuming that Europe is in a position to build a battery industry. Of course, we'd love to be part of it, but it has to be competitive, and it has to focus on research, because the concept of sovereignty for these technologies, well, we're looking at technologies of the future, and so that sovereignty is yet to be gained. And so we are happy to join that project, but the amounts you've mentioned, well, I've never heard such figures. We're not talking about that order of magnitude, but nonetheless, there will be, well, whatever investment will take place will be for future developments. We're looking at solid-state batteries, and for Renault, it is essential to be part of that technological adventure. But of course, we have no qualms about joining the project. Regarding recapitalization, this is not on the table at all, and we haven't even discussed it with our partners. We have quite enough equity to even to face our own restructuring costs here at Renault, or indeed to take on board the impairments announced by Nissan yesterday. Now we have a written question by Beatrice Juez from the Mundo. Apparently, Spain has not been affected, but what will be the consequences for Spain? Are there any plans for Spain? That's true. There's no plan to reduce capacity in Spain at this stage. No need to say more. Vehicle allocation in various plants will be announced when the decisions are made, but this is not on the table today. Thank you. We have a question from Alexandre Guay from L'Automobile et l'Entreprise. Economic havoc is only just starting. What is going to be the consequences at RCI? RCI is providing 50% of Renault's profit margin. Well, RCI is a beautiful tool, and it has been playing its full role in these troubled times, taking what steps were needed to ensure the survival of our dealers, first of all. That's the main thing. But of course, ensuring that we can let them be close to our customers in these difficult times. There's no particular concern about RCI. RCI is doing well. Of course, the cost of risk is likely to increase in view of circumstances, but I have no concerns whatsoever about RCI, which is quite healthy. We have a question from Ron Square. An all question. Yes, good morning. You mentioned earlier on a reduction in manufacturing capacity to 3.3 million units by 2024, but you still said a full regime capacity of 5 million. So how does that work? And then you said that the strategic vision will be carried by Luca Di Meo, but how much room for maneuver will he have? Might his arrival cause a change in this plan? Well, capacity reduction, this is in line with all the plans we mentioned. So we will be suspending the capacity increases. Well, that was not part of the 5 million, but that is part of the equation, especially in such countries as Romania and Morocco. Will be disposing of our stake in the Chinese joint venture with Dongfeng, and that will, of course, make a difference in terms of capacity. There are also a number of plans to streamline capacity in Russia, and as you know, there are other plans being considered in France, and so there we are looking at plants that are now engaging in assembly and that might no longer do this should these plans be confirmed, having consulted labor partners. So that means if you put China, Russia, France all together might enable us to bring capacity down to its right level to provide for more performance for our plants. Regarding the second question regarding Luca Di Meo, whom we are very much looking forward to having on board, and vice versa, I believe, he will be in charge as of the 1st of July, and with the entire management team, especially Clotilde, who will be playing a key role as deputy managing director, CEO of the group, will be discussing the Renault's future strategy. I believe that within a matter of months we should have a clear vision. We'll be in a position to announce it. Will it be at the end of this year or the beginning of next year? I do not know, but that will be around that time. As to room for maneuver, of course, they will have a free rein. The top management and the board of directors are working in full transparency, and we are open to everything. We are facing the same destiny, as it were, and it is for us to ensure that Renault should become a leader in the automotive industry around the world. So all options will remain open, but what we've done so far will certainly help give even more flexibility. What we're doing now is enabling the group to have a sort of an open vision. Indeed, if we were not doing this, there would be fewer opportunities. Thank you. A new question from Thomas Enke from the Handelsblatt. Your microphone is on. Yes, Mrs. Delbos has done a remarkable work for the structure of the group in the future, but Mrs. Delbos, once Mr. De Meo comes in, what will be your role? Well, as Jean-Dominique just said, it will be for me to support as best I can Luca De Meo in his new function here, in his new position, and it will be for us for me to work on the future strategy, and I will still keep my hat as a CFO of the company, so I'll be very busy, but it will be for me to support Luca Di Meo in his endeavor. Yes, well, and I harbor no doubt whatsoever, and let me just mention here that Clotilde accepted her position as interim CEO with remarkable energy in the board of the directors, which I am proud to chair. Can only commend Clotilde for her remarkable work, Clotilde and Clotilde's team for their remarkable work. This has been an extraordinary moment for Renault. Thank you. We have a question from Tara Patel from Bloomberg Audio. Tara? Hello. Yes, sorry about the earlier problem. One question: did you give yourself a deadline for your for the talks with labor unions and other partners regarding the implementation of the plan? Well, no. If we have a deadline, then it's not really. Well, we're not really negotiating. However, the spirit in which we're conducting these talks is such that we want to arrive at a solution as quickly as possible. As I was saying earlier on, the COVID crisis has only made this plan even more urgent, and what we all want to do is to arrive at solutions, at proper solutions as quickly as possible. Now, I have my own ideas, but when all the cards are on the table, when all the criteria are known, when there's full transparency, well, we can expect solutions to be found quickly enough. I mean, I speak from experience. Working at Michelin, but I believe that Renault has the same ability and will to work in full transparency. So all the conditions are met for us to arrive at solutions as quickly as possible. It is for Renault's own good, of course, but it is our #1 priority. Thank you. Now we have a question in writing from Simon Chai from the BBC.
You mentioned on Wednesday in the Alliance conference about sharing production plans. Do you have any plans to produce any Renault models in Sunderland?
Je crois effectivement que nous y avons répondu.
Yes, I believe we answered that question. All right, and then a question, an oral question from Angèle Calvo. Yes, you already took the question. You said there would be no reduction in capacity in Spain, but I believe there will be cut in capacity on the map that you showed. In other words, there will be no capacity reduction, for instance, in Latin America. And then we have another question regarding terminations, cut in headcount. I believe there will be no terminations either in France or the rest of the world, but there will be fewer temporary jobs. Or on question number 1, yes, on this morning's presentation you had a map of the world showing where steps will be taken. So that may be for vehicles, but also powertrains or gearboxes. So you shouldn't. Well, there are different situations, but at this stage, no capacity reduction is planned for Latin America. Regarding question number 2, says Jean-Dominique Senard, and this is in line with what we just said. It will be for us to start talks as quickly as possible with the labor unions wherever this is necessary. So I believe these talks should go smoothly, but of course the idea is to have no layoffs as such, no redundancies. However, one thing I wanted to make clear, this will be painless from a labor viewpoint, and I have made this commitment, and I will stick to that commitment. So we will find where anybody who might be affected by the plan, and this is not going to be overnight. We're looking at 1, 2, 3 years even. For every person concerned by the plan, we will make sure that they will be taken care of. It is not in Renault's habit to leave people behind, to leave people by the wayside, and we are not about to do it either. But of course, we need to engage in talks with the unions, and it is for us to find the best way to go. Well, thank you, Jean-Dominique, and thank you, Clotilde. This brings this press conference to an end. Thank you for attending, and of course, our press relations services is there to take further questions.